Hi, Jean. How are you?
Just fine. How are you?
Thank you. Good. We just, Kate and I always have to have a little quick catch up here before we start. Look at it. It's a beautiful day in Paris today. Maybe it's a little on the chilly side, but it is very nice out today. So we're excited about that. We're excited we could keep Kate dry and not as cold. Not as cold, but we are in the courtyard. We'll give everybody a little bit to jump in here. And if you are, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. Thank you so much. And you want to make sure to find Kate's feed that she's got the picture of the house at the Musée de la Vie. And double click if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, and that will pin her image to your screen. Or in the top of the corner of her image, the little blue bubble, right click on that and you could pin it right there. And I will go ahead and turn mine off for now. So if you get back to my yapping face, you know to go find Kate. But we'll give everybody a little bit here, but we are in the courtyard. And I hope some of you have been to this museum. This is a fantastic museum. It's very small, but it is really lovely. And Kate and I were just talking because there is a little cafe here. And she was saying it was their saving grace after lockdown when things started opening up, because it's this cute little cafe that you come sit in, get stuff, and then sit over there to the right. But you can see, look at that sky, and you can see a little of the sun bouncing off of that building over there. But that's a little cafe over there. Usually there's a lot of tables, but probably more towards the springtime, they'll bring those back. But this little, let's see, this wonderful little museum has these two buildings here on either side. Okay, can you go back to the, are they kicking you out? But the building itself was built in 1820.
Sorry, Claudine, the woman's really shouting at me.
Uh-oh. It's a free museum, lady. Calm down.
I'm getting the full madame.
Oh, goodness. Oh, honey. Well, we don't want you to get in trouble. That's funny. I wonder why they were upset. But the museum itself, we could hold on right there, Kate, because that building right across the street, as we swim around in circles. I'll come back to the museum real quick. But this building over across the street at number 17 was where a woman named Nina de Villar de Calais lived. And she was kind of one of the many ladies of the salon back there that would have these, amazing little receptions, salons each week, and would have the different artists and poets and composers come. But what I really loved about her is that she was a subject of a Manet painting, was a woman with the fans, and she's kind of stretched out on a settee, and she is holding a fan, and she has some on her lap as well. So he painted so many, that was a kind of a big thing he painted. He loved to paint people sprawled out on settees and on couches. But she used to live there in that gorgeous building right there. This whole area, for the most part, was built up in the 1820s, and we are just below Montmartre. We're just below Pigalle, which is where we're going to end up today. And so this whole area was pretty much incorporated about 1820. So pretty much everything you see here, a lot of stuff was done in the Italianate and the neoclassic style. And so they kept getting built up over time. So everything in this is why a lot of these things all kind of date around the same time. Poor Kate getting yelled at by that lady. There's nobody even there. Oh, well. And there's a little school here right next door. And then right across the street from this is where Serge Gainsbourg lived as a child. So a lot of the people we'll talk about today, they are artists. There's a few writers, but there's also a lot of musicians and composers lived in this area too. And there's a school right here. And we're going to come up to this building that is just past it at number 10, which is just past the school on this side of the street you're on, Kate. And up above it, and I've never noticed this before, but I found this when I was doing some research. I have a couple of these really great books about the area that are all in French. And there's the top of this building has this really cool, maybe if we go across the street, maybe we get a little better sign, but I think you're trapped in there because of that. That little fence there. But it was once the Society of Authors, Composers, and Editors. And on top of it, it has the coat of arms of the group. And then it has the angels, two angels, one on each side. One's holding a harp, one's holding a violin. But what's really cool about it, and I don't know if you could kind of see it, but right below it, it's a relief of Beethoven's head. And I never even knew that was there. I mean, when you're walking down the street, this is why you just constantly have to walk slowly in Paris and just keep your eyes out on, like your head on a swivel constantly. Because there's just so much to see. Look at that, and the great reflection. But just imagine all the composers and everybody that went through that place. And this is kind of a quieter little area. That right there, that's a Greek name. Yanis Zengoff. I tried to look it up. He was a composer that lived there. And he was also an architect, and he worked with Corbusier. But it's a really beautiful, it's also another beautiful building. Before that, a gentleman named Adolphe Goupil lived there. He was a huge 19th century art collector and merchant and a publisher. And in 1857, he had that building created for his family, and it also held an art gallery. Oh, look at that cute little thing. Just strolling down the street on a nice Sunday afternoon in Paris. But we're going to zigzag around here. Has anybody been in this area before? Let us know in the chat if you've been around here before. It's a really, I've been here. I've been to this museum a couple times. It is a free museum, going back to the museum. In 1830, when Ari Scheffer moved in there, he stayed there until his death in 1958, just renting it. And then after he died, his daughter purchased the building. And then in the 1950s, it was sold to the city for just basically a symbolic amount. And it was partly annexed to the Musée Carnavalet. And then in 1987, it opened as the Musée de la Vie Romantique. And if you're a George Sand fan, it also has about 3 or 4 rooms that are dedicated to her. There's even like a plaster cast of her hand. It's tiny. As you saw, the house was very tiny. It's free. It's open Tuesdays through Sunday from 10 to 6, and it is free to the public. If they are doing a special exhibit, you do have to pay for tickets for that. But in this area, and Kate, when we get to see that building there with the blue door to the left, that is where one of my favorites lived, who was also very good friends with Ari. Eugène Delacroix lived in that building right there. He lived there from 1844 to 1857. And when he moved from here, he went to the Place de Fürstenberg when he was working on, take us in there. No, I mean, to those ladies, take me in there so I can move there. But his studio was still there, and somebody had purchased it and split it off into apartments. Oh, I mean, I am a total left bank girl, but I might, if I was able to live in his former atelier, I would maybe become a right bank girl. But right next door to him At number 56 is where Paul Gauguin was born in 1848. And at 54, what number are you at, Kate? Are you at 54? Oh, next one. So 56, that's where Paul Gauguin was born. And then next door, if you look up on the building at 54, there should be some really fantastic. So right above the blue door where the bas-relief is, at the top of that, you kind of could see the little heads at the top. That is Eloise and Avalor, the great love story that came along before Shakespeare ever wrote Romeo and Juliet. Theirs is quite the romance. It involves him being attacked in the middle of the night and castrated. They had a child together, and she went off to go live with the nuns and become a nun. And then he was a member of the church, and also look at that. That thing's amazing. What a great door. And then he ended up getting attacked by her uncle in the middle of the night by a group of men and castrated. Oh, I love it. Look at all those carvings. It gets so worn down over the years. You just know people were manhandling it. But the story of Eloise, we did a podcast episode about her. And all of this, I'll put a bunch of notes on my website. I have a special tab that's just for the notes from the walk, as well as a link to the video afterwards. And then I will also put links to any of the other things I mentioned. I'll have a link in there for the museum, of course, but you really should try to get to it. Oh, Susan, that's great. You went there right when it opened. Yeah, it's a really lovely little museum. And again, and if you go in the spring or the summer or the fall and you go sit outside, afterwards and have a little coffee, it's just kind of a nice little oasis right off the streets. And we are on this right now. We're on Rue Notre Dame de Lorette, which is, of course, another very well-known little thoroughfare through this area leading up to Pigalle. And we are going to head down to Place Saint-Georges. Pissarro also basically lived right across the street from where, just down a few doors from where Gauguin lived. So again, this area is just, everything is just like stacked up on top of each other of different artists. Some of them took up many different locations around here, like Chassereau and Jericho. They were kept bouncing around from place to place. And another one of the wonderful French pharmacies. I don't know if you don't follow me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram with Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and follow me because every day I write and post something of French history, but I've been starting to share even more of and other stories in my Instagram stories lately, because I just don't have enough space sometimes, and you could tell it a little more and add some music and fun things. But I was just thinking that because of the pharmacies, when I was just in Paris, at one of the pharmacies, I found toothbrush with, it was basically blue, white, and red, like the French flag. And of course I bought 3 of them. And every single morning and evening, I use my little French toothbrush with my fancy licorice flavored Italian toothpaste. It just makes me happy. So this little park, still trees, is closed, of course. We just always have this luck, don't we, Kate? And it's like, maybe it's open. Oh, look at that. But trees are still dumped everywhere. But this little square is the square Alex Biscard. It was named after a Paris council member. And we are right behind the former home of Adolphe Thiers, which we'll see from the other side, which also holds kind of a little secret a lot of people might not know about, that you could go in. Ooh, I love those little library books. But the trees are, I did see a story though on French TV that they do a lot of times, you know, they cut all the branches off of these trees, and they were using the tree to build up little fences and stuff on the beaches and around the dunes and stuff. I thought that was really excellent use of that. But there's this little park. So it used to be much bigger. It was the back garden of this mansion. And now it is, they gave part of it to the city. The city actually owns the building now. But we're on the back side of this building. And it was built in 1832 by Alexis Dona. He had this neoclassical style built and had his daughter, Elise. She was married off to Adolphe Thiers in 1840. He was a historical journalist and a historian and a politician, and he during the July monarchy, and even was the president of the Republic for a little less than 2 years. But he was actually, and these are the juicy stories I love to find, he was actually the lover of his wife's mother. So Alexis Dona, his wife, who was Eurydice Don, she was his mistress. And so she decided to keep him close. She would marry him off to her daughter. I just love those stories, and they're just so strange like that. How is that your thought pattern at any point that this is I know what I'm going to do? So they ended up getting married. Her mother was 2 years older than Adolphe. And so they got married. And then when her father passed away, they inherited this house, which had quite a bit of the land around this area. And then, as you will see on the front side, it's pretty great in the center of the circle. But you see all these great buildings that look down in here. It's another lovely little secret area. Oh, Teresa, if you do get cut off, I'll post this on YouTube afterwards. So it will be on YouTube so you could find it, watch the whole thing. So I hope you don't. I hope we can keep you here. But look at that. I love all those, the little masks they place over here, although they're all a little bit different, and the gorgeous iron. But the original building was destroyed in the Commune in 1871. This was also right before he became president. It was, they came in and ransacked it, looted it, and set it on fire. And then in 1873, it was rebuilt based on a lot of the original plans that they had for it from 1873 to 1875 by Auguste Constant, who was doing a lot of the work in this whole area. So that's why a lot of the buildings here, there was pretty much two major architects for this area during that period of between 1820 and about 1835 is when most of these buildings all popped up around here. Such a lovely day. But he took over as president after Napoleon III was ousted. But it was 1 year and 8 months that he served. And I recognize his name because he died first, and then his wife later died. And when she died, they donated a very large collection of some statues and objets d'art to the Louvre. When you go to the Louvre and you go to see the apartments of Napoleon III, you'll walk through a couple tiny rooms, and they're dedicated to him, because a lot of the stuff in those two rooms were all given from his estate. So there's some smaller reproductions of the Mercury statue and a bunch of other things, and then a bunch of different objets d'art that they have there. But then his house that we have to the right, that we were just behind, was given to the Institut de France, and which is that wonderful building at the end of the Pont des Arts that also oversees the Musée Jacquemin André, and quite a few other buildings and different museums across France that were given to them. But inside here, there is a library, and the library is only open 2 days a week. It's open on Thursdays and Fridays from like noon to 5 or 6 p.m. And you basically have to tell them why. You have to reach out to them in advance, either call them or email them, tell them why you're coming. But it's mostly has stuff from information from the 18th and 19th century. And it is really beautiful inside. But this is the library where Dan Brown, who wrote Da Vinci Code, spent a lot of his time doing a lot of his research was in this library. It's really amazing inside. But you have to give them a compelling reason of why you want to come there. But you can also, sometimes they do rent this out in case you need to have a party. You could rent it out and have a little party inside there, but it's really beautiful from the outside. And then we'll see another building on this in a minute that is even more beautiful. Look at that lovely day. But that statue in the center is this is Place Saint-Georges. And in this used to be where this statue is now, there used to be a fountain here that would, for the horses. And so it had these big basins. It was later, was falling apart, and this was created. It is a monument to Guevara. He was a lithographer and he did cartoons, but not in the sense of cartoons that we think today. But it has these really great bronze masks that are, does that have water, or is that like a cigarette in his mouth? Doesn't it look like they're like a...
I think someone's put like rolled
paper.
Yeah.
It looks like a cigarette or something of that sort. But look, I mean, this one's amazing. This guy here, one of them's a longshoreman. Oh, this guy is okay, that's hilarious. But this is a really, really, these have all been recently restored because they used to be just 2 years ago, very, very patinaed. So they're very cleaned up, and you can see, look at this lovely lady. But it is by Denis Prouache, and he also did some really gorgeous statues that you could find in the Orsay. And there's a bust of the lithographer up on top, and then around it, right below it, where you see those feet, those are different carnival people that are at a carnival. So it's kind of a fun little statue. Somewhat creepy clowns. But look at that. Oh, that's so pretty, Kate, against the sky. Lovely. Yeah, Karen, this area, I mean, it's kind of a quieter area because I think it's a lot of families, and we have a very good friend of ours, Camille, lives around here, and we are going to be really close today where they have a amazing studio that Kate has shot some video and photographs in, and it has this amazing collection of the art of Jacqueline Merval, which I will be doing a podcast episode about her soon. And then when I'm there, I will do a live video from there, and she will share all of the details about her amazing life. Look at that. So pretty. Isn't everybody so excited that it's getting, every day we get a little bit more light? Oh, the other day when it was like 5 o'clock and it was still light out, I just was, so excited. Doesn't it sometimes feel like it's just never going to come? I mean, not to be dramatic, but it's like, is winter ever going to end? Especially you guys on the East Coast with your snow. I'm so sorry. Pretty. But so that building that's right behind Kate is a even more beautiful than this one. Oh, I think that takes you down to parking or the metro. But look at that building right here. So this building was built in 1840 And it is Gothic revival and neo-Renaissance, and it's absolutely beautiful. It was given to the Marquise de Pigalle. She was a Russian courtesan. And you know, if you've listened to our podcast, we love a courtesan. And she was given this. She lived here for 1 year. She lived on the first floor of this building. And then she moved, and she had her next very wealthy patron built her a beautiful Hotel Particulier on the Champs-Élysées. It is now the Travelers Club, and you can from time to time go inside and visit it. And it is absolutely stunning inside. But this one's really great because above the door, they have those two sculptures. It's Abundance and Temperance. And it is absolutely just a really beautiful building. And sometimes they open that up as well. But I believe it's a government building now that's there, but it's really pretty. Who wouldn't want to live on this little, just right here in this little area? So nice. And then we're going to head back down down the hill, Kate. Eileen, oh my gosh, if closed caption, if they were trying to like take it from what I said, have you ever watched any of those when somebody says something in French and then closed captions tries to write what it is and it's just butchered? But I will put these things on my website. So ClaudineHemingway.com. There's a tab that says the live walks from Paris. And I was already writing up all the notes this morning since I wake up at 2:30 in the morning every day. I was already writing them up. So I will have those on my website later on today. And sometimes I'll put if it's something I mentioned, like I said earlier, I'll have the links on there. But it'll be right down on my website. So you could find the names. This looks like a cute little newer, I think there's always been a cafe there, but we'll go down to this next street and take a left. We're kind of going on this little funny little, very adorable road that goes behind it. That was a rogue road, we could call it, because it was Dassault and some of those other neighbors decided that they were going to make this little pass through here. I'm going to the left. And so it's really cute, and it is probably going to be quite quiet. And I thought it was just going to be really adorable. But they created this because they just wanted this little road that would go behind their houses. And then later on, the city made it official. I don't know. I think which street would you want to live on, this street or the street that looks where we just were into Place Saint-Georges? I mean, look at how cute this is. It kind of reminds me a little bit of London for some strange reason, Kate. Oh, Greek Orthodox.
I was just thinking that it's very like around like Regent's Park.
Yeah, Greek Orthodox Church. It's very cute. It's so quiet. It's the Rue La Ferraille. And it weaves up here. We are kind of going back and forth. So when we do these the night before, so when Kate depending on the time of day I see it, sometimes she sees it, or she wakes up to my lovely maps I make. And they're just so beautiful, aren't they, Kate?
They belong in a museum.
I like screenshot the streets. It's usually, sometimes it could be like 7 or 8 screenshots. And then, with the markup thing on your phone, I just kind of draw the lines, and their lines are like sometimes completely all over the place. And sometimes it's like back and forth. We'll go up this street, take a left, take a right, take a left. And somebody, my friend Debbie at Ron said, "Oh, we'd love to see where we're going to, the map." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if you want to see my lovely maps." Look at these cute little places. So we are in the 9th. This is the 9th, known as Saint-Georges, or also part of it is known as Nouvelle Athènes, New Athens. a lot of the Greek revival here. But see, such a quiet little street. It will, I'm sure, get livelier the closer we get to Pigalle today. But up here, it's nice and quiet. And there's two of the streets that I really was excited to go down because they do have one of my favorite little stories. And then just the amount of people that used to live in this area. I mean, like literally like on top of them. And you just think now, of course, we know these names of these artists and they're just like some of the, the most amazing artists of that period. And back then, I'm sure they were just like, any of us, just, it was just Joe and Susan. And, but now you just think of all of these guys just hanging out together and it's just crazy. And so we're taking a very short little walk here on the Rue Henri Monnier. And right where Kate is basically at number 2, or actually it was right behind us over the pharmacy that was on the corner when I started going on my tangent of my toothbrush is where Eva Gonzalez lived. She actually just grew up the street a little bit and she was a artist and she was during the Impressionist period. She was known as one of the 3 when along with Bart Morisot and Mary Cassatt. And she lived here when she got married to the engraver Henri Girard. They lived in this building right there. She grew up just right behind us down the street. So they didn't move far. They would just end up moving. Some of the artists, they would live very close to their family, like one of my favorites. But it's just a cute little street here. And then we'll take a right at the next block. I remember I came here. I think I walked up here. I got to Paris a few days after the fire of Notre Dame. And this is what the random memories that stick in your head. But I remember walking around here and then I walked through where that little kiosk was and bought this special magazine that was all about Notre Dame and the fire at Notre Dame. And for some odd reason, I just remember that was exactly where it was. So, there's Kate in the window. And this is the Rue Clausel. And this building there to the left with a cafe awning on it is the Café Père Tanguy, which is a favorite thing we'll talk about here in a minute. But this over that building, and I love, wouldn't that little corner be just wonderful to live on? But this is where Henri Francois Resnier lived with his wife, Anne-Louis, and their hunky son. I'll tell you why he's hunky. Louis Antoine. He was the cousin of Delacroix. And they were also an artist. Louis and his father, Henri, were both artists. And I say he's hunky because there's this painting that Delacroix did of Louis that's in the Louvre that you could find it. And every time, like, it looks like it could be right now. I'll put the picture of it on my website. But it just looks like a contemporary person. Like it doesn't look like something from, the 19th century. And then Père Tanguy, we'll see who he is here in a second. But on this street too lived Guy de Maupassant. And also the grandparents of Johnny Hallyday, who was, I'm sure everybody here being Francophiles know who that is, but a lot of people will call him the French Elvis. And then I learned, Kate, that Johnny Hallyday was born in the building right across from where Camille's studio is. In the gated.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I learned yesterday.
What? Not her flat, but the gallery.
The building, yeah.
In the gated studio. Cool.
Where the Jacqueline Marvel is. She lives on a little gated street. We're going to see one side of it, or not. She doesn't live there. That's where they have their studio. But it's this little lovely little street that's gated. You will find some of those here. But number 14, there it is, right over there. So right there where that awning that says Pierre Tanguy is, and I love his story. And I found out about him because there's a painting of him in the Rodin Museum that Van Gogh did. And I love this painting, and I'll put a picture of it up too. And I was like, who is that guy? Which is basically the story of my life with everything. And I looked into it. And so he was a gentleman that had a store right here. He ended up moving down the street as well, which we'll see that door. But this is the one where they have the plaque. And this is where his store was for most of the time. It was here. Well, he had it here for 6 years. And he mixed and sold paint. And so this was where all the artists would come. So everybody from Pissarro, Gauguin, Monet, Renoir, all of those guys that lived around here, Toulouse-Lautrec, Cezanne, and Dr. Gachet, who was the doctor of Van Gogh, and a lot of these other guys who also was a painter himself. And I just wrote a bunch about him recently on Instagram, my Instagram stories. But Pierre Tanguy, they would even say that sometimes maybe his paints were the best paints, but they all adored him. And so, and when some of these artists couldn't pay, again, think of those names I just mentioned, when they couldn't pay for the paint, they would just give him paintings. So the paintings of Van Gogh, and this was one of the very first places a Van Gogh was ever hanging, was in this store. And so these guys, all of these artists would come there basically to visit Pierre Tanguy, but also it was kind of like going to their own little museum. And so they just all absolutely adored him. He ended up moving just down the street to number 9 for the last 2 years and then he died in 1894. And when he died, all of those same artists came together and gave even more paintings to the family, organized like a little exhibition and an auction, and sold the paintings plus the extra ones that they gave him, and to support his wife and daughter. So this is where he then moved here at number 9, just for the last 2 years. But I love his story. But the painting, and I'll show you, on my website, it's this amazing painting of him sitting in the middle, and behind him is all of these Japanese woodblock prints, which was a huge inspiration to Van Gogh. He loved the colors. It was also a huge inspiration to the Impressionists. But I love it because I just love everything about that painting, and I love that story. And it was Rodin's personal, he owned the painting. And so then the painting ended up, it is now in the Musée Rodin, which if you go up to the second floor of the Rodin, there is a couple rooms that are filled with his personal collection of art, which is really great. There's also something that Rodin did. He basically did a small version copy of Rubens' painting of Marie de Medici's wedding, which was by proxy to Henry IV. So it's her uncle standing in. And as if you follow me for a while, you know that that's another thing in the Louvre. One of the 4,000 things in the Louvre I'm obsessed with is the Rubens Medici cycle. And I love that there is a Rodin copy of it. But look at all these. That back at the now where it says Pierre Tanguy, which was his original store, it's now an antique store. So
and if you like vintage fashion, this
that's a good one.
A tiny little treasure trove full of designer stuff. And yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
There's a few of those all littered all over the city. There's a couple over by the Trocadero, which are amazing ones that I tell people to check out.
Pardon, j'ai une tour de l'histoire. Pierre Tanguy, oui.
Everybody's getting up in your business today.
No, It's the Parisian way. It's
Yes.
okay. We love it.
So
Territorial.
it is funny, like when you're walking around with the camera, then people sometimes will look, they don't look right at you, but as you walk by, they're staring at you like, what are you doing?
Well, sometimes people come up to me, usually men come up to me and they go, "Pas photo, pas photo." And I'm like, I'm trying to avoid you. So
Oh.
it's great.
Yeah. And always, some people don't even look twice though. Like, I think they're just so used to seeing things like that now, they just don't even look twice.
Yeah.
So this street here is another street that a lot of people know. And of course, there was the book written about it being the only street in Paris, the Rue De Matiere. And it goes down a lot farther. We're only going to be on it for like 2 short little blocks. But this is a really great street to walk up and down. It is a really fantastic street. But it was, is it Eileen that wrote that book that she writes for the New York Times and lived right off of the street. It's a really great book if you haven't read it. She also wrote one about the Seine a couple of years ago. I think it came out like at the beginning of COVID. But that's a really great book too. And she did another one called La Seduction. And that's a great one. It really gives you insight into the French and into the French mind. And it's not all about like seduction as a name, but just about basically kind of falling in love with the French. I made my mom read it. Elaine, thank you, Jane. I made my mom read it so she could help understand why I love it, France, so much. I was like, read this book. I think she did. I think she read it. But yeah, there's these gorgeous buildings here on this street, of course. Another at number 49 that's just up the street, because we're going to go up the next street. Up the street to Victor Massy. But at number 49 is where La Renaissance. Oh, how cute. Is where Géricault had a studio. He also lived just down the street, a few more blocks at number 23. But Géricault ended up dying in his studio. He was in a horse accident. He died when he was only 36. And so, we think of Géricault, who did the Raft and the Medusa, that amazing, amazing piece of art in the Louvre, and everything else that he did these beautiful, when you go to the Louvre in the Sully wing on the second floor, which is the French painting, there's one room dedicated to Géricault and his followers. And the paintings he did of animals, of horses, and this one of a lion are just breathtaking. But he died, he was just 36, and he died in a studio. He was friends with Ari Scheffer, and Ari came over and painted him on his deathbed. And that painting is also in the Louvre, but it was right here above the BNP Bank. That is where Géricault died and had his studio, but only 36 years old. It always amazes me how many things that a lot of these artists and people accomplished in very short years. But I guess when you think of being, you had to be a lot more mature at, 13 years old back then, because a lot of times you had to go off to work or start supporting your family, and tougher stock, I guess. But this is so you could see the difference between where we started on those streets and here. This is a much busier street where you're going to take a left at the next street, but there's an adorable little carousel up here. Out here in the middle. Around here, just between here and Pigalle, there used to be back in the 19th century, there was basically it was like a model market. And these women that wanted to be seen and painted by the artist, because they could actually make pretty good money standing, holding one position for hours and days on end, they would basically come down here like twice a week to the little square and stand there. And these artists like Renoir and Toulouse-Lautrec and all of those artists that lived around here that we've been mentioning would come up here and basically spot these different women. And that's how like Suzanne Valadon was found, was in one of those. They didn't do those. They only did those for a few years. Cause I think just even saying it just sounds pretty atrocious. I mean, we get the intent, but basically just, it's like a little market where these women would stand and the artist would pick them out. Look at that little great building over here. So this is on the Rue Victor Massy. He was a composer. And this was another street where we had tons and tons of amazing people. Look at that gorgeous building. That is where Paul Delaroche lived. This one was under construction until it was still under construction when I saw that in beginning of 2020. So it's beautifully done. And then coming up, we'll see another little building. Oh, right here, Le Chat Noir. This was the second location of the famous, cafe, the Chat Noir. The road Randolph Sully had. And this was also where Alfred Stevens had his atelier. Oh, look at that. Kate, you should come down and paint something on the wall just like that.
Should start doing that. Make a name for myself.
Do it with a piece of chalk, and you could be like Jean Charles.
True. I'm not sure I've earned the status to be drawing on Paris walls.
I'm just gonna start doing it, except for I rarely go any place, leave the house. But also on this street at number 13 was one of Degas' many locations. Degas and Toulouse-Lautrec were all over the place, changing. Sometimes they would live in their atelier. Sometimes they have an atelier and then an apartment in separate locations. So they all live down here. And number 19 is where Mary Cassatt lived. But another one of my favorite people that when we get to number 25, which is down a little farther, but the back gate of, is it right here? Is that the back gate of Camise? Right where you are? Does that look into there? Yeah. So it's like L-shaped little street. And it is the Cité de Malesherbes. And it is a little street that was created originally by one of the presidents of France. He had a big house on here, and now it's just all popped up with all of these other ones. But this is the street. This is where on the end of it. So if you go in and around the corner over to the Rue De Matiere, that is closer to Camus' amazing gallery, and also where Johnny Holiday was born. I wonder if they have a plaque. We're gonna have to go investigate. But you could check out the Comité Jacqueline Marvel. I'll put the link on my website. Camille and her father has been in the art business for years, and he, if you don't, Jacqueline Marvel, she was an amazing artist at the beginning of the 20th century, and they have a huge collection of her paintings. So that building right here and that lower has really been cleaned up. So in this building is where was the art gallery down here on the ground floor on the street level of Berthe Weil. And she was one of the very first women to ever have a gallery. And she was really, had a keen eye for all of these youngsters in the 1900s that were coming into Paris, like Picasso. And so she actually was one of the first people to actually buy and sell a Picasso. She had those. She had Van Gogh. She had Modigliani. She did the first and only exhibition of Modigliani, and she had his paintings in the window. And there was if you know Modigliani's style is easy to spot a mile away because of the way he's very angular faces, long angular faces. And but he also has a lot of these nude women. And so there was a stretched out nude woman laying in this painting in the very front window with a lot of pubic hair, we'll say. And people were so offended by it that the police ended up coming and shutting it down telling her she had to take it out of the window. They couldn't do this. And so she ended up, she didn't want to agree with them, but she ended up taking the painting out of the window, putting it in the back of it, of the store, and putting different ones in the window. And so, but it was genius marketing at the time because everybody in the city was talking about it. So, but once they finally were able to reopen, everybody came, but not a single painting was sold. And Modigliani died shortly thereafter, which is just heartbreaking. But guess who else lived in that building for a very short period of time, for 2 months, was Mr. Vincent Van Gogh and his brother Theo. So Theo was living in Paris, and Vincent was like, I'm coming to Paris. He lived in a teeny tiny apartment, and Vincent basically just crashed it in with him. So the two of them lived there for 2 months, from February 1886 until April. And then they ended up moving over to Rue La Pique. But could you imagine? And look at that gorgeous building. I love these buildings here. And then right behind Kate is this little private street. And this is Frochot. We are going to go out onto Avenue Frochot. But this wonderful little street had tons of different artists that used to live here, including Jean Renoir, who was the son of Renoir, who was a filmmaker. He and his family lived here. Django Reinhardt, Alexander Dumas lived here. Chassereau, Theodore Chassereau, which we'll talk about again in a second. Gustave Moreau, Toulouse-Lautrec had a studio in here for a little bit, but it's this beautiful little street that is closed off. They just won't let us in.
Best window in all of Paris.
I know. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? There's a lot of crossovers here around here with the Art Deco and Art Nouveau. And we're back on Rue Henri Moreau. And this is where the Chassereau, Theodore Chassereau, had a studio. We just mentioned him. He also died when he was about 36 years old. 36, 37. There's the amount of artists that died between when they were 36 or 37 is kind of mind-boggling. And one of these days, I keep amassing this list of names, and one of these days I'm going to write them all up. But he was here. He was greatly inspired by Ingres, and then with his neoclassical style. And then he ended up being more inspired by Delacroix with his Orientalism. And you could see in the Louvre, when you go there, you basically go from a room that's Chassereau to the Delacroix to the Jericho. And so it's amazing how they lay those things out, because you definitely get to see, and there's always reasons why they lay all those things out in museums and why they put things next to things, so when you go really kind of look, because that's also a really fun way to discover, is also to kind of get into the minds of the curator. But he was really influenced with the neoclassical Ingres. And then you definitely see, you could look at the paintings and say, yes, that was inspired by that. And then that was definitely Delacroix. It's really, he also did last weekend, when we were out around the Musée d'Orsay, he had done a bunch of paintings in the Palais d'Orsay, and luckily some of those survived. And those are in the Louvre now that they were taken down. But this, of course, we're heading right up to Place Pigalle. But on this street behind us is where Degas lived. Toulouse-Lautrec had a second to his last studio on this street. And Degas lived next to a brother and sister, and his name was Désiré Diot. He was a bassoonist and a friend of Degas, and he captured him, as well as Toulouse-Lautrec and a bunch of other painters. And Degas he was a member of, when he would always paint the orchestras of the opera. And so this is Place Pigalle. And so sadly, the buildings that we will mention are sadly not there anymore. But Kate, if you go out here to the middle and then look, which direction are we? East, the other direction. that building over there in the corner, that used to be Le Rat Mort, and it was basically means the dead rat, and it freaks me. I hate rodents so much. I don't even like saying that. But the name comes, and it's going to get worse. The name comes because the day they opened, they found a dead rat in the beer pump, and it ended up just filling the place with this horrific smell that they could not get rid of. And the smell just got worse and worse and worse for days. And somebody said it smells like a dead rat in here. And that's why it was called Le Rat Mort, which there's no way I would even I couldn't even go to that building knowing that 200 years ago they found it. Just would freak me out. But the building next to it.
It's the side of Parisian life no one tells you about.
I know. There was an Airbnb I was looking at one time years ago, and it said that they had found, somebody wrote in the comments, and this was from they wrote this in the comments 8 years ago, that there was the family of mice, and nobody since then in 8 years said anything about any rodents, but I was like, nope, not doing it.
We get our fair few mice in my flat. They love to.
Completely freaks me out.
Because I live next to the bee garden. They love coming
that's
in.
right. You're right up against the garden. So they all to come on in.
I'm the first stop.
Yeah. But they're so nice and sweet. They take care of them. I would just leave with the clothes on my back and never come back. So the building right next to it, and this is another one of those juicy stories that I was super excited about, and might also add another little layer to one of the favorite things everybody finds in Paris. So in that building, a woman named Apollinaire Sabata lived. She was held these amazing salons. She was a bit of a courtesan as well, or just had many lovers. But she was this beautiful woman, and she was friends with all these different artists and the writers of the time, and had one wealthy lover after another. And so all of these artists wanted to paint her and sculpt her. Baudelaire, she met Baudelaire because for a short period of time, she lived at the Hotel Laison, which is that gorgeous building at the end of Ile Saint-Louis that I am just dying to try to get into. It's the one that has the beautiful downspouts that have the dolphins on it. So Baudelaire lived there as well for a short period of time. And we went there in an early walk we did over a year ago. And so I'll link that. You can find that on my YouTube channel. But she would have these different men that would come, and they'd have these salons every single Friday night. They were always very lively. So she inspired all these different people to sculpt and paint her. And there is a very famous painting in the Orsay that's called The Woman Being Bit by a Snake. And it appeared at the Salon. And of course, it freaked everybody out because people said it looked more like it was a woman in the throes of an orgasm. And so that's not even the juicy part yet. And so this painting, it's a beautiful sculpture. It's absolutely stunning. And I'll put a picture of it. But she posed for that. But then in 1860, she met this wealthy Englishman that was in Paris named Richard Wallace. And Richard Wallace is who we can thank for the Wallace fountains that everybody loves in Paris. So she was his lover for almost 10 years, his mistress. And it's around the same time that he created the Wallace fountains and dedicated those and donated them to the city because he had come into this large inheritance. They are now having their huge 150th anniversary, I think it is this year. But then I started looking at the faces and also the sculpture, and I couldn't find anything that mentions it as far as the sculptor that did it. I couldn't find anything linking it back to her, but it just makes me wonder because it was around that time and she inspired all this other art. Maybe she's the faces of the Wallace fountains. I was very excited about them. So at that straight ahead, where is the Pigalle over there, or the Bio, whichever it is, the Bio, that building was the Café de la Nouvelle Athènes. And this was where many of the artists all would hang out. And another one of my favorite paintings that you could find in the Orsay by Degas of the absinthe drinkers, of the couple that are sitting there, and she just looks completely miserable and so sad, and there's a glass of absinthe in front of her. That is where that's where this painting is set. And so it completely, you know, the painting, I mean, Kate?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so sadly, that building was destroyed in a fire. So unfortunately, nothing remains, but it was this cafe from 1855 to 1903. And so everybody would go there at that time. In 1914, it turned into Le Monaco. And then in 1920, became the Sphinx. It was a nightclub and cabaret. But in 2004, the building was destroyed, sadly. But I love that painting. And I used to just always be struck at like just looking at her and thinking she just looks so sad. And what is she thinking? And then I found out that Degas couldn't find people just randomly that looked depressed enough for him. So he had two friends of his pose. One's an actor. She was an actress, and he was also a fellow painter. And so then I was like, oh, okay, it doesn't look as depressing now. But it's such a beautiful painting. I absolutely love that painting. And it was painted right there. But this whole little area, Place Pigalle, and Jean-Baptiste Pigalle was a sculptor. And I put something about him in my Instagram stories the other day because it was his birthday. And I shared the fact that, you know, this poor guy, because I have said his name before and people say, oh, the sex district in Paris. It's like, no, poor Jean-Baptiste. He was a beautiful, amazing artist. And now a whole generation of people just think he's the sex district. It's not as much the sex district, but it's cleaned up a lot since 5 years ago when I first discovered up here. There's still all the stores down the street though, aren't there, Kate?
There are, and I would say, like, you have to have your wits about you in this area. Just if you are coming here on holiday.
Yes.
There are some interesting characters.
Yeah, especially if you keep going down to the right.
Yeah.
Especially at night.
Or like really, I'd say like 6 or 7 in the morning if you happen to be getting up really early to go out somewhere.
Yeah.
That's the time to be
the witching hour
around here.
The witching hour.
It is the witching hour.
Yeah, it is. But there's also like right back where we were. There's a ton of these really, really fun bars and like small nightclubs that took over many of these places that were like former, you know, cabarets and stuff, tiny little places that are like, you know, right up my alley because they're all red velvet and they're just, oh, I love them. They're so neat. And so a lot of these bars moved in there and left things. So there's one of them that actually has like a dancing pole in the middle. And so as the night goes on, I went there on a date with a guy once and it was super fun. But at some point there's always people like twirling around on the pole, not, you know, just on their own. But there are these really, like there's the Lipstick and Dirty Dick, I think, another one.
Sister Midnight, have you been there?
Yes, Sister Midnight. That's like done by two, like it's a couple from New York, I think.
Well, he's actually from New Mexico and she's from Manchester.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they lived in New York.
Always went there during did something there. But they look like they have amazing cocktails. So there's some really the area is kind of keeps evolving. But if you go down to the right, you know, a good 6 or 7 blocks and in this area in the early hours, well, I stayed in a place that had this amazing balcony and looked at Sacré-Cœur. And that guy, when I told him where I was staying, and he was like, oh, and he was like, well, you have to be careful around there. Sometimes you just go around one corner. You're not in the greatest of areas. He's like, don't walk around there at night by yourself. I'm like, okay, great. Thanks. Completely freaked me out.
Yeah.
But it was fine.
It was fine. You know, I've lived here for 3 years. 2 years. Yeah. I don't know what time is anymore.
Yeah. It's just like any big city. Just know your surroundings and know where keep your stuff close and you'll be fine. But we are down the street too from Moulin Rouge, of course. So basically, once you get to this side of Pigalle, then you're heading up towards Montmartre. Oh, here we have some of the lovely businesses in the area. You know, there's something for everybody. But we will go ahead and leave you guys. We'll let Kate head back. And look at how that great light, Kate. It's only 6 o'clock there.
I know. The day's getting much longer now.
Oh, so much better. It's just so depressing when it's dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. But thank you guys so much. And if you want to leave us a little tip, we would, of course, be super happy and gladly accept it. I will post the in the chat. I'll post a link to both my PayPal and Venmo. They're both the same. They're both at Claudine at ClaudineHemingway.com. I think Venmo sometimes shows up as Claudine-Hemingway. But thank you so much. And thank you so much, Jean, already for your delicious little tip. But thank you guys all so much. And we love bringing these to you. And we love getting to see Kate each Sunday, and her mom does too, Karen. But look at that great little place. Oh, we can't wait to see the ivy come back there. We'll have to mark that to come check back out here in a few months. But we will find some more great little things and see you guys all next Sunday. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday and a great week. And it's almost already February, the shortest month of the year. Yay. So it's shorter days till I return to Paris. But thank you, Kate. And Kate's lovely. Kate's an amazing artist. And she also embroiders, and she made those beautiful masks.
And slacking on the old embroidery.
Yes, they're very, very lovely with the iris. It's almost going to be, I think last spring you were wearing that one. Didn't we go to like the Jardin des Plantes, and they were standing right next to the irises in the garden.
Yeah.
We're almost to that time again. But thank you guys all so much, and have a wonderful Sunday. And make sure you check back on my website, ClaudineHemingway.com, where I will put the show notes and everything. And follow us on Instagram. I'm Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and Kate is KGS French, right? Mm-hmm. I think last time I forgot the S. But follow us, and she posts all of her fantastic, lovely art all the time, and her beautiful photographs. So give us both a little follow, and we will see you all next Sunday. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.